Welcome back to the table. We are taking a look at Hot Racing's TD series, big bore shocks, and the recommended springs that they have on their website for those shocks. So I can't say there hasn't been some disappointments in all of this. In the Hot Racing shocks, yes, there has been. If you've seen my first video, you'll know that right away that there's an issue with the ball mount that comes with it. And there's a fix that I've got on that video to show how to fix that. You want your suspension loose, and what it came with just don't work very well. But I made it work. But watch the video, and that'll show you how to fix that. But today we're talking about the springs, these goodies. So on Hot Racing's website, they recommend 3 different spring sets. A linear set, and then they have 2 progressive rate spring sets that they recommend for this shock, right? Okay. And of the 2 progressive rate spring sets, one is listed as a front and one is listed as a rear. And you can see right away that there's a size difference in the springs. So this is the one that came stock on the Hot Racing shock. Kind of progressive, kind of linear combination, a little bit longer. But what they fail to tell you is that the springs that they recommend for the Hot Racing shocks are not actually made for it. So let's talk about this. After talking with customer support for at least a good day, apparently they don't make springs specifically for this shock, just what comes on it. So bada boom, bada bang. So now you know. These springs that they list on their website, even though it doesn't tell you, are actually made for the Traxxas big bore shocks. Right? Why would they list these to use with these and they don't really fit? Let me show you some measurements here real quick. So you've looked at some of the measurements, and the blue by far is the worst. I mean, I guess I could force that on there, and you can see where the black left a big scrape mark trying to get it off. The red actually fits. If you look at all the dimensions, I mean, it'll snap on there. I mean, anytime you talk about suspension binding and whether a shock's doing its job, you know, do you really, really want to have binding in your shock on your collar? Seriously. Look at that. As these compress, they try to go up over the collar. They're going to bind up on there. So just so you know, these are made for the Traxxas big bore shocks. Plus, they fit a standard Traxxas shock nice too. These are basic slash shocks, and you can see that they fit nice. They go on perfectly. But I got a little beef with them recommending them for this shock, especially since they don't fit. These are, they say the standard's 15.5 millimeter, but you see from the measurements, they're not. This one's the red's a little bit bigger, and then just about right on 15.5 millimeters round inside diameter. Why couldn't they have made the shocks just a tad bit bigger to work with this collar, or make a set just specifically for them? All right, I just wanted to rant about that because that really peeves me off. And especially this one being the most undersized of them all. You know, I even talked to customer service about that, and they said it's within spec. 15.5 millimeters. Okay. So these are out of spec. They're too small. I mean, they're too large. Right? That's what I would say. And if you take one of the one of the ones made for the 100 millimeter and the 105 millimeter shocks, gosh darn it, they fit good. Look at that. So it just irks me that a company would put recommended springs on their website and it's not actually fit properly. That just irks me to no end. And apparently customer service has no wants to resolve the issue. So if you're buying the hot racing springs for the TD90, for the TD90s, just be forewarned that inside diameters are too small to fit over the collars. Now the 105 millimeter shock, I didn't have no problems with the recommended springs. So it was just with the 90 millimeter recommendation. And this set says it's for the front. Maybe the backs are different, but they were adamant in their customer service that this was for Traxxas springs, for Traxxas shocks. They're big bore shocks specifically, but they will fit the stock shocks too, as you can see. Fits around the collar and everything, like it should. But buyer beware. If you're buying them by the recommendation on the website for the hot racing big bore bleedable shocks, this is the 90 millimeter version, it won't work. So heads up. I just wanted you to see. Okay, so I'm going to use these light springs on it. I kind of wanted to give them a try. I went out and ran my Traxxas the other day with just the standard springs that came with them. Did really good. Unfortunately, it might have been a little too stiff because I ended on my lid all the time. But I wanted you to take a look at how this is going to have to work. So usually when you adjust preload, it's fairly easy, right? You just screw it down over top and then poof, you're done. But with these, being that these stick together so tight, how are you going to adjust your preload properly? Right? So the only thing I can think of is to adjust it down. Pop this into place. Make sure that's back there. And we'll use one of these spacers in here. Okay, just so that we know that we're at a starting point. Traxxas spacers do line up, so saves you from doing measurements. So we'll go with that to start off with as a preload. But preload, with this spring being stuck on the collar, it's going to be hard to do your preloads. I mean, just out of the box looking at it. So just a warning. Okay, we're back. Now let's get these shocks installed with the new springs on them. And as you see from my last video, just to kind of touch base in case you didn't watch it, I did have to file down the inside of the stock Traxxas A-arm to get these balls to fit, because unfortunately they come with a rim around them also, a flange. If they didn't have the flange, it'd probably fit perfectly, but it's the same as the top. It's just frustrating. Why send a ball with a flange on it if you're going to have two O-rings in between them? It just doesn't make sense to me. I mean, things should move freely and your suspension should move good. So let me stick this in the bottom A-arm real quick, and then we'll screw the top on. Okay, the bottom's screwed in. One thing that the kit does come with is two panheads and a flathead screw. The flathead's actually supposed to be for the top up here, for this little thing, because a beveled washer. It's supposed to fit inside the beveled washer. But being that in order to get good swivel, I had to turn that around. I had to use a panhead screw. So one thing Hot Racing was nice enough to do was to send me 4 panhead screws as a replacement. And I got a couple from a friend too. Dark Eco sent me a couple of longer screws if I need to use more spacers. But that's one thing about Hot Racing. Their customer service is right there, but just this particular implementation, this particular product is probably not their best. I'm just going to say it. I'm just going to say it. Probably should have got the other ones, but or another brand. But I'm stuck with these, and I'm going to use them. They're pretty nice, other than the spring difficulties and some of the other things. The assembly, you know, they're just some oddball stuff. You can see one of the panhead screws that they sent me, went ahead and put in the bottom. And we're going to use a panhead screw up top there too. So remember that I said in the video, standard is to have this beveled washer turned around the other way and use the flathead, the flathead screw. But I lost my balls. Oh my gosh, my balls. But in order for everything to work good, because of this flange, if they didn't have that flange, I think it would be okay. Although I'm not a fan of O-rings on both sides. That just stiffens things up and creates another unknown variable. So if you turn the beveled washer around, put that over that, you basically eliminate the 2 O-rings, and you eliminate the flange. See, the flange is gone now. So that works for me. I mean, you might think differently, but I also, these bleed screws I turn the other way just for a little added protection. See, look at that. We have swivel. We have pivot. We have swivel. There's no stiffness. No O-rings in there to get sucked in. Just saying. That's the way it should be. So I used a small spacer on the back side. Not a big fan of these slash shock mounts anyway. There's no adjustability. You got one spot, 2 spots down here, 1 spot here. I want more spots, so when I can get some money, we'll replace that. So we'll stick that in there. I can't tell you how difficult it is trying to work on this through a camera. But such is life. It's what we got. It's what we got. Just snug that down just till it's tight. Oh, look at that. Look at that. Looks good. All right. Let me get the other ones put on there. We'll just see how soft and how much droop we get with these and see what kind of adjustability we can get. Okay. Springs all added. We do have a little more droop now. I used a standard Traxxas large spacer just as a starting point. It's going to be really hard to tell what preload is on because of this binding around here, but we're going to roll with it just because we've invested in it. So customer service doesn't want to address it other than we can set up a return through you for a main. Do you have any other springs that would work? No, we don't. So I kind of like the way this feels. It's got 30 weight. I got 30 weight shock oil in, and then I used the really light, the lightest one spring to go. So let me work on the back. See if I run into the same issues with the larger 105 millimeter. Okay, just so you know, this is the bottom mount to the rear, just so you can see how they kind of mount. There again, I didn't want to change out any balls or anything, but the ball that comes in the end has a little flange on it, and you can see it mounts up really nice. There's no issues whatsoever. This flange doesn't get in the way. But they only come with one set of beveled washers for the tapered screws, so, and you have to use a pan head down here. All right, let's get them on. Okay. Got the 105 millimeter recommended shocks out of the bag. Do we see a little height difference and wiggly woggly? Yeah, there's some height differences in all of these. Hot Racing's quality control is left a lot to be desired. I appreciate you hanging with me this long, but I'd watch it if I were you. Alright, so I found that all the springs fit on the 105 except for the silvers. And they're a tight fit. This one seems kind of bent. They fit, but it's tall. It's going to be hard to do your preload since your spring's not loose between the bottom collar and the top collar. So just remember that. I'm using the red, so they're pretty good. We'll go with that. Let me get these installed and we'll be right back. Okay, we finally got everything installed. Front spring set, back spring set. We are a lot more softer now. I'm probably going to have to add some preload to that. Look how that settles. Whoosh. Got 30 weight oil in it. What about doing everybody else's suggestion and going to 50 weight oil and look how soft that settles. I don't know if I can show that or not. It's pretty hard. If there ain't much spring there, I have to use the stiffer springs in the back. Go back to the mediums. Front feels good now. I mean, that feels good to me. Nothing's bouncy. But we'll see what happens. Hot Racing springs and Hot Racing shocks. Make sure you watch the videos. Take a look. We'll get out here and run them in a day or so, but that's what we got now. All right, thanks for watching. Hope that helped a little bit. Sorry for running so long, but I think you need to know. All right, bye.